Hey everyone, I'm Gloria Masters and I host Handing the Shame Back. And this show is dedicated to the amazing survivors across the world who have experienced child sexual abuse. We know the numbers are big, we know it's frightening what's happening out there, and this is one small way of bringing a safe place to land for you amazing survivors out there. As with every show, there's a trigger warning, and that's deliberate because I don't want you traumatized or panicking or anxious. If you find that happens, please stop watching, go to the show notes below, and you'll be directed to some resource and support. So in the meantime, I'm so excited to bring this guest to you because her and I have been trying for a little while now to bring her to you. So her name is Kel Humphries. She's all the way from Queensland in Australia. She's a survivor. She's an advocate. She's a speaker. She's a researcher. There's just so many things. So I'm not going to keep banging on. I'm going to get her to. Kel, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Gloria. I know it's been a bit of a battle trying to find some time that we can catch up and have this conversation. And I just want to say thank you. And I want to just say thank you for the work that you do and the impact that you have look, New Zealand is an amazing country, but it's quite small, really, but your ripples are quite big. And I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing. Because it does make a difference, and I think for many survivors, even survivors that I work with, they often just feel so alone in this space, and you're not alone. So if you're listening, you're not alone. Both Gloria and I, we see you, we hear you, we understand, and most definitely not alone. So on that note, yes, I am an advocate. I'm a speaker, survivor, author. I'm trying to finish my book 2. I keep saying book 2.5. Been trying to write it for like 10 years. It's just things get in the way, life gets in the way. But I've fallen into research after 16 years as a police officer. So I only just resigned in August last year. A little bit because of needing a mental health break, but a little bit because I got headhunted into this other role. More and more, I think that we're seeing lived experience being pulled into research and government policy making, which is fantastic. I want to say about fucking time, right?
Yeah.
But that's where I found myself in research, and it's been a massive growth period for me this last 18 months. I can't even tell you. That, and then I host my own podcast as well. It's called Off the Cuff with Kel. So again, like you, advocating the voices of survivors, but also those working in the space who are supporting survivors, because there's so many out there that are trying really hard to further the mission of child protection and child prevention of harm. So I really believe in giving a voice to the whole sector, because those working in the space, I think, really struggle too. They want to know that they're not alone in the work that they're doing. So I wear a lot of hats. I probably wear a few too many, but you know what? That's the call, isn't it, Gloria? We got 2 choices. We can pick up that damn phone or we can hang it up. But I don't think hanging up feels like an option to me. It is
No,
what it is.
I don't think it, and I agree with you, and I want to hear all about that in detail in our next segment. But if possible, Cal, oh yeah, Helen, could we please go into your? Could we please go and this is a visual as well as a listening podcast. So this podcast is now in 83 countries across the world. So we're very excited about that. So Kel, just we always start with this. What is your kind of experience or history of child sexual abuse, as little or as much as you would like to share, helps our listeners contextualize what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, no worries. And look, it's often difficult, I think, because we don't always know sometimes I think if we've been abused or not. And it's very difficult for a lot of survivors sometimes to understand, especially in familial situations. So that's what I want to talk about. My perpetrator was my uncle. So we know that 89% of perpetrators are known to the family.
Yes.
And it's also the least spoken about. So it's why I do what I do. And essentially that's the heart of my experience. And my uncle was very close to our family. So we grew up in the bush. I want to say the most innocent, idyllic childhood, throwing cow shit at my brother and hurdling over barbed wire fences, running down cow trails and swimming in the dam, in our undies and throwing mud pies at each other and, bathing in the rain when it was like coming off the roof and we're out under the rain. So it was fun, but we didn't have an education around, sexual behaviors and grooming and body parts and things like that. So I didn't really understand or know what was going on when my uncle started to groom me. I mean, you don't know, you don't have words as a child to describe those things. And, he spent a lot of time with us and our family. He would read books to us. My brother, my sister and I are all 5 years apart. So we're quite a little bit of a gap there. And, I don't remember or recall him really doing those things with my brother and sister. He spent a lot of time with me, however. We'd go camping. I love fishing, still love fishing. And he would come and, I guess, capitalize on those opportunities to do the things that I loved so that he could use those opportunities to
gain access.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of things that parents kind of miss in the grooming process. And I think a lot of parents don't realize that they're also being groomed.
Yes.
And they forget that that's a part of a perpetrator's MO, essentially. That's what they do. They groom families to have access to children. And that's really what he had done. And it's hard because, again, family spends time with family, but within that, there's ways in which he would say, oh, I'd love to take Kel fishing. She loves fishing. And utilize those opportunities to then sexually offend he would bring me into that too. And this is really hard. And I think, Gloria, there's a lot of shame around kind of survivors having to admit this part, is that you almost feel complicit in doing these things. Like, I wanted to go fishing and I knew what would happen, right? But you do it because you fall into these maladaptive fawning behaviors, these people pleasing behaviors, because you don't really know anything else. You don't kind of know what's going to happen if you say no, and you can't control it, right? You can't control the outcome and the heavy grooming that's pervaded this, like that's been kind of pushed on you throughout the cycle of this offending. You don't realize that you kind of can say no. You feel like you absolutely cannot say anything about this, and you feel so ashamed.
Yeah. But I'm going to cut you off there because a couple of you're saying a lot that's quite powerful, but a couple of poignant things. One, the biggest group by far that are groomed are not the children, it's always the parents, 100% agree. Two, as a child, if you don't mind sharing the age that this began, I just want to tell you something about children.
Between 7 and 8. I don't really know exactly when. I just know that it was around 1988.
So there's no way as a child of 7 or 8 you can ever say no to an adult. Our cognition is not developed. We do not understand what is happening. And there's a reason that in most countries across the world, adults are not considered adults until they are 18. So you had no choice. What were we conditioned with, Kel? Do what the adult says, respect your elders, do what you're told.
That's right. Yeah, and I guess you don't realize, I mean, I've been kind of digging into my second book, and pulling apart all the reasons that our boundaries get violated. So this is what's in my head at the moment. And you're exactly right. We're conditioned in a number of different ways. We're, by the social constructs around us, by what we're taught and learned. And, as adults, when we're looking back at that, we're thinking, I should have done this, could have done that, wish I'd done this, wish I'd done that. But as you're saying, we're not developed, our brains aren't developed in order to do that. But as adults, we expect so much more of our little person, and that's just not the case. And it takes a lot of work, I think, to be able to accept that we do kind of understand it on the surface. We like, yeah, well, we couldn't have possibly made those decisions, but we don't always internalize that belief. And it takes us a long time to go, actually, it really wasn't my fault. I didn't do anything wrong.
Exactly. And here's a way to confirm this. You're going to love me, Kel. And hello, beautiful survivors. Welcome back. Isn't she great? I knew you'd love her. Kel, a way to confirm this is that when you first told your story to, say, family or a close friend, I guarantee that how you felt was not that of a strong adult, but of that as a 7 to 8 year old speaking.
Oh God, yeah. And still even,
Boom.
I do say this all the time. I say when I'm working with police, I share a lot at the police academy with detectives who work with historical sex crimes. And I say, you have to remember when somebody discloses to you, they're going back to that very same moment when this first began. And when you are disclosing, and just to encourage any survivors listening, don't be so hard on yourself. Trauma visits us in many ways, but it just brings us back to the kid that needed to be loved and held and supported at that time. So just hold a little bit of grace and compassion for yourself when you're so stressed about disclosing. And usually what I have found, and was my story, is I would be a bit like a turtle. I think of it like a turtle. So turtles have a, hard protective shell, and, they'll stick their little heads out to make sure that it's safe, and then they'll kind of plod along. But as soon as the sign of danger comes up, what do? They pull their head back into their shell. And that's what we do as survivors. We test to see if somebody is safe to tell. We might start to tell, and that person may or may not believe us, and they may or may not act. And really, what most of us want, and in my experience, is for it to just stop. Yeah. We don't always want, the person to get in trouble or whatever. Yes, we do sometimes. But, by all kind of consideration, this is somebody in our family. So there's this massive confusion and this betrayal trauma, and there's this cognitive dissonance around it being very strange and weird, but I still love them because they're related to me and I'm supposed to love them, aren't I? And this real misconstrued version of what love is supposed to be.
So what happened from there, Kel?
Yeah, look, I remember having such a hard time disclosing. And, as I was talking about that turtle before, I did that. I remember an elderly woman who was part of our family circle who I tested the story with, and we will do this with different people, and we won't necessarily have to say something, but we'll be looking, right? We'll be looking at them and wondering, and like, I don't know about you guys, but I would plead with my eyes. I'd be like, save me, like, stop this. And I'm like, as if anyone now as an adult, as if anyone can tell what my eyes are saying. The part of me is like, can you not read my eyeballs? Like, can't you tell what's going on here? So subconsciously trying to telepathically tell somebody to help me. It didn't work. But there's this hope, right? Like, there's part of you that looks and just goes, can't you see what's going on? But I tried to test the waters a few times, and then I got too scared. And I remember when I was 12, and I talk about this a little bit because it's really important, I think, My uncle was convicted of something. I don't know what it was, but it was some sort of sexual offense against another little girl. And mum was at the sink, and she was like, bashing the plates around as she does. And I thought, oh God, she's really cranky about something. And then she swirled around and she's like, has your uncle ever touched you like this? And I was like, ah. And I had a freak out and my palms were sweating, and I was like, oh my God. And I was like, this is the moment. This is when I get to say something. But it wasn't really until that moment that I kind of knew that it was wrong. And it was already perpetuated for, 4 years. And you're kind of stuck. You're in this cycle then. And so then I knew I had a choice, but I couldn't say anything. I froze. I literally froze. And I get kind of mad at myself, and I think, why didn't I say something then? There's nothing wrong with my mum. She's not scary. She's great. But I froze, and I since know now that that's a trauma response. And it's very realistic that we can't say things when our brain is flooded with cortisol. It's actually a chemical reaction to not being able to speak. So when someone says to you, why didn't you say something, and you freeze, well, we have to understand there's a biological response, and we can't be responsible for biological responses.
I'm going to stop you right there, because audience, listen to that. For those of you, me included, that used to get challenged around not being able to speak, why didn't you speak? Why do you take so long to why do you mean you'll come back to me tomorrow? It's exactly what Kel has just shared with us. It's the cortisol coursing through the bloodstream, and it just won't let us.
Yeah. It floods those parts of our brain that are responsible for language and processing, and it shuts it down, because that's our body's survival response. So often our trauma responses are our survival responses and our body's way of coping. So we blame ourselves, and we get so fucking angry, and we hate ourselves, and we beat the shit out of ourselves for the way we responded under the stresses of trauma, under the stresses of abuse. I disassociated when my uncle was, orally abusing me or physically, whatever he was doing to me, I would float above my body and like watch it happening, right? Yeah. So I know that's yucky, but I go, okay, I didn't understand that. I just thought I was like really cool and I could do superhero things. And I was just like, I can get out of my body and like be like a fly and watch things. But I didn't realize it was actually called something, and it was a survival mechanism called disassociation, right? And there's a spectrum of disassociation and dissociative behaviors. And if we leave those dissociative behaviors without support and intervention, we can actually end up in a really bad place. So yes, it served its purpose then, but it doesn't serve its purpose anymore. But there was nothing wrong with you if you were watching your life like a film. Many of us can say, yes, me too, because that's coping, that's survival 101. That's our body overriding our survival. So our body and our hormones overriding the physical need to stay safe by doing whatever it needs to do. It's like when you, those people who are survivalists end up in the bush or something like that and get injured, certain other parts of the body take over to restore and maintain the body's survival.
Well, I love what you've said, because again, that's so powerful. And I heard it said this way, I think you might enjoy this, Kel, that dissociation is when the mind leaves the body because the body can't.
That's right.
It's that simple, isn't it? The body can't leave the scene. The mind takes over and does it for us. So we're all grateful, aren't we, for dissociation. So, Kel, just as we're coming into the end of part one, is is there like, are you able to just share with us kind of what age it was all over in terms of the abuse from your uncle, and if your mum and dad ever found out during your childhood that that was the case, that he had been actually abusing their beautiful child.
I'll try and sum it up because it's a bit of a story. It's kind of cool. I do have a book, so that kind of tells it all.
Oh, well.
Yeah, look, after, we had that incident, I was 12 and I realized it was wrong. I think I found ways to reduce our contact subconsciously. Like, I tried really hard to pull away, and I spent less and less time with him. And I ended up getting a scholarship to a girls' college in year 11 and 12. I was a very good athlete. So I threw myself into everything that I could to avoid sitting still, as we do. And I ended up going to a girls' college in Toowoomba, and it was the best thing I could have done. It really helped me to take back a lot of my power in ways that perhaps I wouldn't have otherwise thought. And I got strong. I got really strong. And when I was about 15, so around the same sort of time as I went off to this school, so I turned 15, there was this massive showdown between me and him when he had taken me off to a remote area, and he had every intention of having sex with me at that time. And I had a busted knee from I'd hurt myself very badly. So I remember because I couldn't run away. I couldn't run away, and I had this overwhelming sense. So he'd started to taking me off into the bush, he started to sexually offend against me, and this thing rose up in me, like this lion like rose up within me, and I got so angry, and I like literally kicked him out of the back of the wagon, and I got up, and I like had to pull my pants up, and I remember punching him in the chest. I like punched him right into the chest, and I started screaming at him, and I said, "Don't you fucking hurt me, don't fucking hurt my sister." I went off. I went completely off at him, and he just dropped his head and just went, "Okay." And I went, "What?" Like, all I had to do was say no. And I just was like, "Oh my fucking God, you fucking coward." And I was so angry because I thought all this time, and I was angry at myself, and then I was angry at him, and I was angry at everyone, because I was just like, all this time, and I felt like I didn't have this courage to yell and scream at him and say, "Don't fucking touch me." Like, I didn't know where that line came from, and I wish he'd fucking come back sometimes. I swear to God. It's there, don't worry. But yeah, it was just one of those things, because I thought at that time that I was like, "Oh my God, we're out in the middle of nowhere. I can't run. I'm either going to die here because I've just confronted him." Look, he never said he was going to kill me or anything like that. It's just this feeling of shit, I can't control whatever's going to happen now. And so, he was a military. Well, I remember this photo of him in military pants, and he had a gun in his hand, and he'd shot a pig. And there was this one photo, and I couldn't get that out of my head. And I thought, I'm going to be the dead pig. Like, it was very irrational kind of thinking, but very real to me at that point in time, because if I'd known who he was, I probably would have realized he was an absolute fucking piece of shit coward.
Yeah.
But know that. I mean, you don't know that as a young person, and you don't know what's going to happen.
And that's exactly what they work on. And Kelly, I've got to stop us there because we'll never get to part 2. Who knew there were so many words in you? No. Hey, audience, please stay there, Kel. Please stay there. Audience, you can thank me later or now, but just to have the incredible Kel Humphries with us, with this lived experience, those are the people we need to be listening to. There may be psychs around, and no disrespect, there may be senior people who do lots of work within this space, and that's great, but always give me a lived survivor with their experience and knowledge, because you can't beat it. So grateful to Kel. Look, as always, beautiful ones, we're coming back with part 2, so I can't wait. But in the meantime, I see you, I stand beside you, and I believe you.